Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stewart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, hello everybody. I'm Stewart. We have Larry Taylor on board tonight with an update, and we have a special guest, Jeff Alexander, who saw a UFO. Not only saw one, photographed it, and got a picture of it up on my website. I think Larry has pictures of it. So why don't we start with this, because this is abnormal. I mean, we have millions of reports of UFOs, but very few people actually do get a photograph of it, and very few people get that close to one. So, welcome, Jeff. How are you doing?
Oh, pretty good tonight. How are you?
Good, good. Hey, Larry, you want to start off with the questions?
Well, I can, Stuart. Thanks for having me, and Jeff, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you.
You don't have to identify where you actually live or anything like that, but, what we'll be talking about really is an area outside of Mena, Arkansas. I suppose around Iron Mountain. We can just place it, close to that. And
right.
This occurred when? Now, what was the date? How long ago was this?
Oh, I can't tell you the year, but I know it was like in April, about the last part of April it happened. And it might have been, I'm just guessing, like 7-8 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember. A friend of mine that lives just south of Mena actually approached me and told me the story about what you had seen about this saucer craft and the UFO, and you had taken a photograph of it, and I was really intrigued. And then I think it was, I met you at Walmart, and it's been a few years ago, and you gave me a copy of the image, and then it's been around a little bit. I sent an image to Stewart Best. He posted it on his first website, and I had shared it also with Richard Shaw, L.A. Marzulli, and Stan Deo, and I don't know if you know any of them, but they're well-versed in UFOs and things like that, and they were very intrigued. And as a matter of fact, Stan Deo made comments about anyone that's around really close in to a UFO because of the energy fields. He said that what you had described, or you're about to describe, would actually be accurate, that you would feel outside the craft a slowing down of time. And so why don't you just kind of give us a rundown of what happened, what got your attention, and what you went to look at, and what you felt and experienced. I know you said it happened really quick, and I'm sure that's true, but just tell us kind of what happened and the circumstances.
Well, okay. It was like in April, and my boy just got off the school bus, and we were sitting on the back porch of our house. And it was after 4 o'clock, and all of a sudden, I kind of noticed it was getting really hot out. Like, it changed to really, really hot. Like, it seemed like 100 degrees from maybe 60. I mean, it changed that much. And I looked over, and it was just the picture, it was light, really bright. So I went off the porch to go over there and see what it was, and I looked back across the creek, back in the woods, and I seen it. It was really bright, really hot, and it seems like I stood there for a while, but then I ran back over to the house and grabbed my camera and came back over, and I took like 2 or 3 pictures of it, which you've seen. And it was like all of a sudden it was just gone.
Wow.
But, yeah.
Did you hear any noise?
No, I didn't hear nothing. It was just there. So, I come back over the... Well,
yeah,
I come
ahead.
back over to the house where my boy was, and he said I just was over there for a second and came back. But it seemed like it was a lot longer to me.
Well, that's really
interesting.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Stuart, that was really interesting because Stan said as you get closer to the energy field or the surrounding field of that craft, it can be a multidimensional effect going on, and that time is going faster inside the craft and around the craft than it's actually going to people that's away from the craft. And so that's odd because you say you went down and looked at the craft and it seemed like more time went by, because when you came back to talk to your son, he said you were just gone a second, but you felt like you were gone for a little bit of time there.
Right. It did. I mean, I don't know. You couldn't really run that fast, because I was running, trying to get to the camera and everything. I was like, man, I got to get a picture of this, And it was like you just couldn't go. And I remember it was so hot. That's the big thing I remember.
Larry, what about the temperature rise?
Well, that would, we've had reports, and of course Stan Dale's talked on those. Some people that have seen things experienced a cold effect, but then other people that have seen some of these objects have sensed something like a heat around it. And Stan indicates that that's a sign of a dimensional or a portal activity, because whatever's coming out of another dimension the temperature it'll be different than what it is where it arrives. And you remember, yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering, when did you notice the temperature rise? Did that come, Jeff, at the same time or approximately the same time? Did you see the object actually descend, or did it just materialize?
It just was there. It was just, I was just, it's a screened-in back porch, and we was just sitting there talking, and all of a sudden the temperature just got really hot. And at that point I turned around and saw this, light, big old brightness. But I couldn't see what I took the picture of until I ran across the yard and back over by the creek. And then I could see it back in the woods.
Do you have any idea about how big you think it was? It looks pretty big in the picture.
Yeah, if I was talking about it today, and because of this, the radio show and all, but I would say I've measured it kind of like the length of a building that I have, and it's about 40 feet maybe. That's what it looked like, to me. And I don't know how far I was away from it. It was, I'm thinking like 100 yards or so. But it was kind of memorizing, wow.
Yeah.
It didn't, and I went back there, and it did not burn the ground or any of the trees or anything. I mean, I walked off, and it wasn't that day, believe me. I was like, I don't know if I'll go back there right now. But the next day, I walked back there. Well, yeah, it's like, dang.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, so I went back there and looking for a burn spot or something, and there was nothing. And like, okay, that's different. And then I knew, this picture's pretty cool.
Did you see any, I know there's trees in the way, but did you see any windows, or was it all just bright light? It looks like they got windows there.
Yeah, it was bright. You got to realize it was like the heat was the incredible part. And I'm looking. It was just really hot all of a sudden, and I look back there and it's just all these bright lights back in there, and I don't know if I just pulled the camera up and shot a couple pictures, and then it was gone. So I didn't really get a whole lot of time to stare at it. I was kind of really hyped up on getting some pictures of it more than actually looking at it, you know. And that's what I did, and then it was like gone.
Well, Larry, what do you think? Is that you know, those kind of things? Either, you know, could that be a portal that it came through and then just went back into it?
Well, you know, Stewart, it's well known. When I was living outside Mena myself for a while, and you've seen some of the photographs I've taken, Stewart, of really anomalous UFO craft and such. And I do know, and I've talked to some of the residents around there, even though I live in Oklahoma now, I talked to a lot of the residents in that area that, you know, they've had a number of, like down by Rich Mountain, they've experienced UFO activity, and I know Jeff probably knows where Rich Mountain is, and also reports of, I talked to an individual, a retired military guy there that had run into a number of what he called, you know, Bigfoot or Sasquatch or, well, you know, that he used either name, and some people have seen that, but that area around Mena, and of course, Jeff this experience was around Iron Mountain, and I'm familiar with Iron Mountain and where it's at. And this whole region is just a region of phenomena that has gone on, and a lot of people in that area, they don't talk about it much, they don't say anything much, but if you know them very well, they'll share some of the things they've seen, and lots of reports of Rich Mountain activity, and of course, Rich Mountain was always reported to have a lot of underground caves that the Forestry Service and the government had blocked off and tried to keep people out of. But Jeff, do you know anything about the phenomena in that region or that area?
Not really. I moved here probably 14 years ago, and I got a little bit of homestake here, and that's the only thing I ever really seen. I saw one up in Michigan that was kind of strange, and I actually have a friend here that saw one. So, but other than around this area, I really don't know a lot about it. That's just what I seen that day.
No, was this in a clearing, or was it actually in the woods in a kind of a clearing? Or don't you know?
It's back in the woods. No, it's back in the woods. It's in the back of my property.
Wow.
Yeah, it's back. It's I got a creek that runs through there, and across the creek, you can't see the creek in the picture, but it's up ahead of it, and it was, I don't know, I'm thinking 100 yards or so back in the woods. It kind of looked like to me, but I really couldn't tell because it was really bright.
Yeah, you can tell from the pictures that it looks like there are. It almost looks like those are windows, and the reason I bring it up is because Cynthia and Suzanne, my daughter, saw a UFO out in the field, and it looked very similar to what you took a picture of. Only they could see it, and it was round, like a disc, and they said that they thought it was probably about the size of a 747, and it just kind of sat there hovering over the field and rotating, and then all of a sudden it just disappeared, just vanished, boom.
Right.
When they move so fast, it looks like they vanish, when in reality, many times they've just accelerated so fast you don't even see it. So that could be what happened. But I'm curious about the temperature rise, because what do you think, Larry? I mean, some people have really gotten scorched, gotten burned, like radiation burns.
Well, Stewart, we do know from people there's been a number of people that have investigated UFO activity, and there has been people that have been associated with radiation burns or radiation, the heat from radiation, and also temperature type heat. I was going to ask Jeff, when was the first time, because you told me you got a little bit spooky going down there or being around it because you felt like time had slowed down. When was the first time you actually seemed to recognize a difference in time?
When I come down and I looked at it, it just seemed like I couldn't go back to the other house to get my camera and stuff. I was thinking, and my feet was like wanting to move, but I just couldn't go as fast as I normally could. You know, and I was
almost
looking
like
at it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Slowed
Jeff.
down. It just slowed down. Everything did. It just couldn't move as fast or nothing. You just slowed down. It was different.
Yeah. Have you ever had a dream where you're trying to run and you can barely move? That'd be something like that, I would think.
Right. It would be. It was just kind of really strange, you know. It got so hot so quick, and then I went over there and I ran back to get it, and my boy said I was only gone a couple seconds, but it felt like a lot longer than that, because I knew my mind was telling me to do this, but my feet and my body wasn't cooperating.
You know, Stewart.
Yeah.
Stewart, doesn't that remind you a little bit of what, we've heard something associated with UFOs, and they call it some type of strange paralysis of your body functions, and that kind of reminds you of that, the way he's talking there, like something was slowing him down or restraining him from any movement or activity around that craft.
Yeah, that does. With the heat and the slowdown of time, obviously we're dealing either in some sort of energy form we're not aware of. And I know people, they kind of mock all this and they laugh at it, et cetera, but millions of people now have seen these things. They've approached them. Some have gotten burns from them. It's odd in a way that there was no scorch marks or anything on the ground with so much heat involved, but you just really don't ever know when you're dealing with that what you're going to deal with.
That's what I figured, Stewart. It was because it was so hot. I thought for sure something was going to be burning back there or something. I didn't go back there that day, but the next, I kept looking back there, and nothing happened. I did go back there, and I didn't find nothing.
Well, I don't think probably most people would go back there either for a while.
Yeah, it was different.
Well, let me ask you this, Jeff. Could you tell whether it was hovering, or did it appear to be sitting on the ground, or was it maybe a little up off the ground? Could you tell?
Well, to me, it looked like it was sitting on the ground. I mean, it didn't move up and down or nothing. It just was there. Is what I seen. But it vanished. When it vanished, when it took off or whatever it did, it was just gone. I didn't hear nothing. I didn't see nothing. It was just all of a sudden gone. So I guess I got lucky with the camera.
Yeah, very, because that's a beautiful picture. Actually, it shows up very, very well. It's one of the rare ones, actually.
Oh,
I
got like a 10 by something picture hanging on my wall of it. It's like,
well,
yeah,
I guess I would too.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to ask, Larry?
Oh, I was just. Did your son? How old was your son, and did he see it or know about it at all, or did he comment on it?
Well, he just got out of school and he does athletes and all that, so he was laying on the bench in the back room in the back porch, just kind of resting. And I guess it happened so quick he didn't have a time to respond to it. He just laid there and was sleeping kind of. And I was, standing there talking to him after school, and this happened, and I just took off the porch and ran over there and came back and then ran back over there. And but he said, yeah, it was really bright out. But now the porch has a wall on it that's about 5 feet high. So him laying down really couldn't see what I was seeing standing up. So.
That's very, very strange. Well, talk about paranormal. That's what Night Shadows is all about. It's about the paranormal, and that's very paranormal. Do you suppose, Larry, there's any chance that could have been a holographic projection?
Well, I don't know, Stewart. I've never heard anybody talk about the holographs having any kind of heat signature with it.
Exactly.
That's strange. I don't know.
That would probably rule out any holographic trickery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do know, Stewart. There were people that I talked to in the Mena area that had younger people in their family, and they claimed visitation by a saucer craft. And of course, I shared that with you, and I think we did it on a radio show. How that they were being visited by the Greys, and the Greys were in this saucer craft, and I tried to talk them out of dealing with them, but they enjoyed the paranormal end of it, so I couldn't change their mind. But the Greys seem to be involved in that region too, operating.
Yeah, you've had a lot of portal experience up there on the mountain too, and we've got so many pictures, like the Bermuda Triangle. They've actually videotaped some of that stuff, and they've taken pictures of it, these portals that open up. So there's something really, really strange going on. And I guess, Jeff, you're probably pretty fortunate in a way that you got to see something like that.
Yes. It took me off guard. I mean, it's like, wow, what is this? And you kind of, I guess, I don't know if it's curiosity or whatever, but you kind of draw to it too.
Yeah.
You do, It's like, I always thought if I ever seen some big old scary spaceship or something, I'd be like really leery to go to it. But I didn't have a problem. I just ran right over there. So I don't know if that's part of it or not, but it was all different to me.
Well, did you sense any fear at all?
Not really, but afterwards, all my friends are going like, they could have melded you with their rays and stuff. I was like, I don't know. I never thought about it. I was more interested than so. I don't know. Just when it happens, and that's the moment. So you just go with it, I guess.
Yeah, Stewart, it reminds me a little bit of, you remember the event with Travis Walton? They made a movie out of that. Of course, that was a different scenario, but it almost makes you think about that. I think Jeff was really smart to be leery of staying in the close proximity of that.
Well, that movie was called Fire in the Sky, and if any of the listeners haven't seen that movie, they should go rent it or buy it. That's a true story, and they have absolutely never, with lie detector tests and everything else, ever proved that they made that up. That was a real story, and that was, of course, an abduction. And they found Travis on the road, maybe a week later or 2 weeks later. I can't remember the time span, but he was taken on board. And they've never proved that it was a fib at all. And that's not the only one. There was a fellow in Canada that literally got burned. He saw a UFO. I think he was out hunting or something, and he saw a UFO in the field, went over, and he got radiation burns from it. So, what you saw is very real. Don't let anybody ever tell you it isn't. The paranormal part of this thing and the dimensional shifts, the gates and whatnot, I think it's all coming out into the open as time goes on. So
yep,
that's very fascinating. Larry, got anything else?
No, that's Jeff. Did you have a comment?
No, I just appreciate you guys, and I'm really glad you got hold of this picture and was able to show everybody. And that's, it was just, that's all that happened to me when I got it. But I appreciate you guys showing it to people.
Well, you're welcome. That kind of stuff really needs to be out there. People need to be, convinced that there really is a paranormal world out there that we know very little about, and you just happen to be an eyewitness to it.
Yep. If it ever happened again, I'd give Larry a call and tell him come out and check this out.
Okay, that'll work.
So, all right.
Okay, well, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yep. All right,
okay.
Larry. See you, Stewart.
Yep.
All right,
okay,
bye.
thank you.
Yep.
Boy, what do you think, Larry? That's if people need proof of this sort of thing, that picture should show them.
Well, it really should, Stewart, and I appreciate Jeff coming on and sharing it because, there's a lot of times people will get a photograph, maybe not as good as his photograph, but they'll get a photograph of something or something that was a little bit odd like that, and especially when you have the time element involved, where time seems to slow down or change, and you're aware of that. Now, that's unusual. And usually people won't even talk about it, but Jeff's really been up front. I met with him. He shared a picture. I sent it to you. We showed other people. We talked about it on prior shows, but this is the first time we got Jeff on to talk about it himself, and I appreciate him doing that.
Oh, yeah, because a lot of people don't want to talk about those kind of things. They're afraid. They're going to get mocked. They're going to get laughed at. And I don't really understand it with the millions of people around the world that have actually witnessed these things, photographed these things, videotaped these things, and yet for whatever reason, the general public seems to, well, even if they believe it, they don't believe somebody who's seen one. Let's put it that way.
Well, you remember.
So where do we want to go from here?
I was just going to comment. Yeah, I was just going to comment, Stewart. You remember the time that I was working for the sheriff's office in Oklahoma over on Hugo, and I saw the cylinders. Me and my wife both had the experience with the cylinders, and that was the one that made my wife sick. And, when I reported that, I actually had MUFON come down from Oklahoma City and interview me, and that's when I was told by the sheriff I must be nuts, and I needed to find another job, which I did. I quit and went to another location to work. But you can lose your job, and you can lose neighbors. And, talking about these things can really, it can cause you problems. That's why I really appreciate Jeff coming out in the open and sharing that experience. Yeah,
it really can. And, like the cylinders, even, can't think of the guy's name now, he was an insider's insider, and he talked about these huge cylinders, and they're freighters. They're huge. Some of them are over a mile, and people listen to that, and they say, well, you're totally nuts. We can't be building stuff like that. But they do build stuff like that, and they're well known. In fact, up here in Wisconsin, when I was driving down the highway one time, I saw one out the window. It was way up in the sky, and what caught my eye was the sun hit it, and it made kind of a flash. So I looked up, and here's this big cylinder just floating up there. And a little bit later on, there was a second one, and about 500 people in the state of Wisconsin saw the same thing I did. So they're real. They are right there. And it was Peter Bader who talked about. He called them when they went into Germany under Operation Paperclip, and they pulled out a lot of the German scientists that were operating the missiles and et cetera, they split up this UFO anti-gravity stuff that the Germans had been working on. Part of it went to the Russians, and I guess some of it went to the United States, and they say some of it went to Japan. So it's kind of a global initiative, backwards engineering this stuff. Peter Bader called them Russian cosmospheres. And if you go back into the Nazi German blueprints that they discovered of these Heinebus and the motherships, they look like those. So I'm not sure why people have so much trouble believing all this stuff, but evidently they do.
I was going to share with you real quick, if you got a second here. I watched that movie today I got from the Watcher store. It's The Unholy See, talking about the Vatican knows all the secrets. And in the interview, what was interesting, I was going to share that with you because we're talking kind of UFO. Tom Horn interviewed the scientists or the physicists that were working, at the Griffith Observatory in this DVD. It's revealed, and they told him that they were, of course, they have the Lucifer device that's attached to the biggest scope, and they said what's the difficulty is a lot of times with what they're viewing, and they would not tell him what they were viewing, and they refused to let him see images of what they were viewing, but they said whatever they're viewing, there is so much UFO activity around it, a lot of times they can't even observe the object because of the UFOs that are in the way between, I guess, Earth and where they're viewing from and the object that they won't talk about that they are viewing. And Tom Horn surmises that they are literally viewing Nibiru, the star system there, if you want to call it the star, and the other planet, and et cetera. And there appears to be, in truth, so much UFO activity around that there a lot of times they're not able to really view it properly. So I knew you'd find that odd that that's going on.
Wow. Yeah. Well, how do we know? How do I word this? Does anybody know when this thing is actually going to arrive? I mean, obviously they're observing this thing coming inbound, and now we have what's his name Perry going down to where he went down to Antarctica, right? And he's obviously went down there to view something. And they had the Pope go down there, and Krill, the Eastern Orthodox leader. He's been there. What's going on in Antarctica?
Well, we've heard that is the best location, I suppose, because of the atmosphere to view this object. But now, what Tom Horn seemed to dovetail into this is that all of the artifacts from the antediluvian or the pre-flood world pretty much are in a cavern system under the Vatican, and they have they have all of the knowledge, or they call it the secret knowledge of the pre-flood world and what happened about the time of the flood, which I think is the same. It's a destroyer, and the entourage is what it is.
Yep.
But they say that in that data that some of the things Zechariah Sitchin claimed were true, because he said just before he passed away that they fully well know that there are some type of beings that are involved. He said during the flood that some beings were swallowed up in the flood, but that some come and go from this other place, I suppose, of the fallen ones, and that they're expecting that as an incoming. They don't really know, I think, an arrival date, because if some have told us, even Standeo says there's reports it speeds up and slows down, and so it's not a constant speed. It's almost like it reminds you of, remember Independence Day, They said, well,
Yes.
when's it going to hit the Earth? They said, well, we're having a problem with that because it's slowing down, decelerating. You remember?
Yep, I sure do. But I think I'm beginning to suspect that the year 5777, which, when I did the Omega Code, I kept coming back 2017. You got to 120 years from Noah, and Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be. And Noah was given 120 years. So I thought, well, okay, if Noah's got 120 years and it's going to be identical, then in the latter days, we have to look at 120 years to see where it would all work. And lo and behold, the first Jewish Congress laying the foundation for the state of Israel, guess when? 1897. 120 years, 2017.
Wow.
When Allenby retook Jerusalem in 2017, and 100 years later is 2017. So when you go to 67, the Six-Day War, guess what? A Jubilee, 2017. It all ends on 2017. And we have the star sign of Revelation, and it's the only time it happens, I guess, in any modern time, is on Rosh Hashanah, 2017 going into 2018, next year. Everything points to that. And now they have discovered there's a comet that is going to be in that star sign joining the moon, which is under Virgo's feet, and it's there on Rosh Hashanah, and it's named 67P. It's almost like the Lord is saying, look, 1967, I'm pointing to it, the P, pointing to backwards. Look, 67, what happened? You know what happened. For the listeners who don't, that's the Six-Day War.
Yeah.
When Jerusalem was set free. So here we go.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, it's so interesting that we're seeing this culminating or appearing to actually begin to become more prevalent about the same time that we are seeing really the beginnings of the fall of the Babylonian system, Babylon America, etc. But this is what's interesting to me about the time frame, and it goes with your Omega Code, I think, closely too, is Medvedev is the Prime Minister of Russia, was just sent by Putin, and I showed a picture today, him praying at the Western Wall. He's in Israel. He's meeting with Netanyahu. Putin sending instructions, and one of the instructions is that Obama had indicated that Jerusalem is not in Israel. Putin says that Israel has the right to Jerusalem, and at the same time you've got an incoming Trump, a trumpet, I guess you could say, that has announced that he's going to give the new location as the U.S. Embassy to move it to Jerusalem, which is really incredible. And there's reports coming out of Israel in the Israeli press, and that's the only place I find it, that are talking about Medvedev is there preparing a meeting between Netanyahu, Donald Trump, and Vladimir Putin. So what's going on with this Jerusalem-Israel thing?
It is all about Israel, and it's about the third temple. They want permission to build the third temple. Now, you and I both know what that means.
Oh.
And so the election of Trump, obviously, we've been kind of wondering what this is all about. You have prophecies that say Trump is never going to take the White House. Thus saith the Lord. They're positive that the Lord told them that. And then you have other people that are equally positive the Lord told them that Trump was not only going to get into office, but he would start hitting the ground running, but he's not going to last very long. In fact, one prophecy that I heard, he's going to be cut off, soon cut off. Now, I suppose we can take that in any way one wants to take it. But what it indicates is that the Lord has used Donald Trump to expose all of the corruption, dishonesty, lies, deceptions, et cetera, to the American people. So the American people have no excuse whatsoever. But at the same time, we're hearing rumors that there's a betrayal going on. So I don't know. I guess we all just have to wait and see which way this whole thing goes. But talking about Trump, it does seem odd to me because of the last Trump. At the last Trump, are we beginning then to enter in to either the last 3.5 years, or are we entering into a 7-year tribulation period? There's arguments that are very valid both ways, so I guess people can argue it any way they want. It's kind of like the rapture. Well, the word rapture isn't in the Bible, so you guys are nuts. Well, the word rapture actually just means a snatching away, a translation, a vanishing, a violent taking. And that can happen anytime, I guess. So people can argue it all they want, but I'm sure the Lord knows when it's going to happen. And we don't. But anyway, it seems odd because Trump actually means it's going to be a new beginning of everything if he carries out what he said he would. Now, there's already rumbles coming from Congress. And we're sorry, Donald, but there's not going to be any wall. And now I hear that he's kind of modified his stance on several things. And he may be taken in the back room. You know, that's kind of how they do it. And this is how it is. And this is the way it's going to be. And don't try and upset the apple cart. So it depends on whether he listens or refuses to listen, I guess. What's your take on this?
Let me ask you this question, Stewart. And since we're kind of on a UFO night, I did want to, I posted on my blog if people want to go there and look, a day or so ago, a UFO sighting. It's a UFO object that shot or buzzed through the skies of Washington, D.C. on the day Trump was elected to U.S. president. And that's what I find telling. Even with Obama, there were paranormal events, there were UFOs, there was all kind of stuff. And then the people, you know, we can go all the way back to Eisenhower. And with Reagan.
Yes, we can.
Now, I don't know how many, but Stuart, it seems like every time there's a big deal going on in any nation almost, especially Israel, and of course you connect us with Israel, UFOs are seen. You know, whether they're signs, I don't know. But let me ask you this question, Stuart.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still getting emails from people that are just in awe. I guess church-related people. They're shocked because Trump just doesn't appear to be Jesus. And you know, I'm thinking, well, Cyrus, he wasn't Jesus. Matter of fact, he didn't know Jesus. He didn't even know the Father of Jesus. Period. And Isaiah 45 clearly says that. And so, Stuart, let me ask you this: you know, even though he's a wild card, and we could agree on that, does it really matter what decisions Trump makes from this point on? If he just allows the freedom for God's people to go do what their the Holy Spirit tells them.
It doesn't.
Does it matter what decisions he makes?
Yep, I think that's what this whole thing is about. I think Trump's job is to do exactly what Cyrus did: release Israel to go back and rebuild their temple. If we're watching a duplicate, that's exactly what Trump is going to do. He's going to allow the third temple to be built. Now, you and I both know what the Arabs are going to think of that. So it may not be a smooth road, but, Cyrus basically destroyed the Babylonian system, and that's basically what Trump is doing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you went by his speech and he did everything he said he was going to do, which he probably won't be allowed to do, but he's going to try, it would destroy the whole Babylonian system. Now, we do know from James that the rich men of the earth throw their gold and silver in the streets, and it's a witness against them. So that's a witness against the money powers.
Well, let me ask you this, Stewart. This kind of crossed my mind as you just said that verse. I know a lot of times we think we know what those verses mean, but Fox News was calling out George Soros today, and I think Trump has called him out in the last day or so, declaring that the rich men are George Soros and his organizations are behind the funding of all the protest and the rioting that's going on in our streets, that these are paid protesters. And I got to thinking, isn't that what George Soros is spiritually doing? Basically, he's throwing his money into the streets to the protesters and the rioters to just raise Cain in America?
Yeah, and he's also being exposed. Now, you had a I don't know if you want to call it a dream, vision, thought, whatever, that the fall of Trump, not the fall of Trump, but the fall of Soros.
Yeah.
Now, Soros is being exposed, and what he's actually doing is probably totally violation of international law. I mean, if they can go after somebody like Assange, why aren't they going after George Soros?
Well, you know as well as I do, Stewart. Yeah, well as I do. That's what they were saying about why aren't actually the authorities taking on the rioters, and that's because you have a DOJ that is under orders not to do anything, and so the whole federal Department of Justice is paralyzed from the top down. Yeah, they're going to just stonewall everything. But, I got a feeling the Lord really is going to expose everything so that the American people have no excuse. They don't really have any excuse now, but I think it's going to get far worse as far as, he's going to throw it in their face. And so that, the Lord does not want any to perish. He wants all to come to repentance. So I think he's going to expose and expose and expose. So this ought to get very interesting. Speaking about the Temple Mount, this is very, very fascinating in view of 2017. Why is it all of a sudden we have Putin, Netanyahu, and Trump meeting about building the third temple? I mean, it's right on time. So how much evidence do the people need? And by the way, the number 5 is the number of grace, and 7 is the number of completion. So I'm beginning to think that 5777, with the star sign and everything else that's going on, may be the last year of grace for the church, and the door closes. And I remember you had a vision about that door closing. You want to elaborate a little bit on that? Do you remember that one? Oh man, that was it was really a terrible vision from the beginning of it, because I saw that there was this shelter, kind of like a I guess what you could call it looked like a massive storm shelter, but it was actually a place to store the wheat. I don't know what you call it, a silo or whatever, but it protected the wheat. And there appeared to be a little bit of wheat going into the garner or the storage building or whatever that would look like a storm shelter, because it was massive and a huge, huge door. And the door was open wide, and that was what was so interesting that caught my attention, was that the whole sky was turning black off in the distance, and you could see an incredible storm coming. And I looked at that storm, and I was listening to the wind picking up, and I was seeing what was going on around me, and I thought, they can't. The people, you know, the buildings, the cars, they can't take this storm. This storm is just too massive for that. And so I followed the wheat. I went into the shelter, which was, like I said, massive, and I've never seen anything of great strength like that was. But as the door began to really close, and it was just almost closed, and there wasn't that, you know, there was wheat in there, you know, piled up, but it wasn't like you would think it wasn't full, and the door was closing. And I thought, wow, that wheat's going to be ruined out there in that storm. But at the very last minute, just before the door closed, my Lord, there was a massive influx of wheat, like you would see, you know, at a granary, how they just pour grain out of a field. Well, this was incoming. This was coming in from outside through that crack in the door as the door was shutting, and it was just almost shut. I mean, there was a massive influx of incredible amount of wheat, and then the door went boom, shut. And I mean, it was a finality to that door, and you couldn't even hear all the stuff you were hearing outside anymore. It was just the wheat was protected. So,
and I will take the wheat into the barn.
Yeah.
So age of grace over. The parable of the 10 virgins. You know, they sat around, and most of them were sleeping, and some had more oil than others, and you know, the door was shut. And this is it, folks. The door of heaven, under grace. We're under grace now. We call it the church age, but whatever you want to call it. But that door shuts. And when it's shut, the people stand outside and they're knocking. We need to come in. We need to come in. It's kind of like that vision that Augusto had, wasn't it, where the girl pleaded with the Lord to let them into the craft that were taking everybody out. And Jesus said, I can't help them. I just can't help them anymore. And you know,
I remember Augusto saying that tears were running down the face of Jesus, and he was telling the little girl, I can't save them.
Yeah, you know, there's so much deception out there. I just wish people would read their scriptures instead of mocking it, because you're mocking something that you don't know anything about. When I put in stuff on my video documentaries about the Bible, people call up and say, well, I'm not going to watch that. It's got Bible in it. Okay, be an idiot. I don't care. If you want to be an idiot, you can be an idiot. You know, there's no law against being stupid or an idiot.
Yeah.
But at the end, the ramifications of that, of refusal, are beyond anything I want to even talk about. And I'm sure you don't either, because of some of the witnesses or visions you've had about the time of the end. People, we have no idea what this is. I don't think we have the imagination to know the absolute horrific stuff that's coming to the United States. You know, the Bible talks about we sit as a queen, and we will see no sorrow. All the other nations get pounded, but America will not be pounded. I got news for you. America's going to get destroyed from one end to the other. And your safety is in the Lord Jesus Christ, right?
Yeah, amen to that. Listen, another thing, too, and I don't tell people always to believe everything Sartre Paul says. Of course, you know that I know, and you know that some of that's propaganda, but there is truth in there. And there was a recent report just came out through claiming that Putin had made the remark that the election of Donald Trump had, for now, stopped World War III, but actually it had brought a revolution to America, a civil war.
Yes. Well, I think we're watching that play out in the streets. What's your take? I think those are going to be worse and worse as we go forward. There's no way, if Trump is real, and I'm beginning to think he probably is, no matter what he is, the Lord is with him, and the Lord's going to steer him through this. But
Well, this is what's
how
so
can the
interesting,
bankers
Stuart.
allow him to do anything?
Yeah. This is what's so interesting, though. We may have had that wrong a little bit. You know, we were continually bombarded with people that claimed that the Patriots were going to actually be the ones that start the Civil War, and states were going to leave the Union, and people wrote books on that because of corruption in office. Is it by chance possible that we had that in reverse, that now we've got somebody coming into office to drain the swamp, so to speak, of the corruption, and nobody wanted him? Isn't it interesting that the trouble or the civil unrest and revolution seem to be coming from the very ones that claim the Patriots are going to do that?
Yes. Yep. It is a reversal, and a really amazing one. And one of the things that I heard, I think she was a lady who the Lord had told her that there was going to be all kinds of trouble, lots of trouble. That the communists and the Marxists, socialists, they're not going to give up without a fight. These New World Order people they've invested years and years and money beyond measure to bring about their New World Order. So if Trump is for totally real, they have to get rid of him, either before the election or after. But they got to get rid of him, unless he's a traitor. And he's been lying all along. So we sit, we wait, we watch.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, it's amazing the accuracy, it seems, of the bots. They seem to be playing out exactly what you've been talking about. And then Susan Boyle, actually, that picture you had of her, then I put one up today with her waving goodbye, and it's like the swan song. And all of this seems to be, it reminds me of what Jesus said. He said, when you see all these things.
Yeah, exactly. And we're seeing all these things. And Susan Boyle, when she came out to sing that, had a tag on her, and it was a countdown tag, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. She came out in 2009. It all ended in 2014. Something is going on and has been going on now for some time. So I think we're at the end of it. I really do. I think 5777 and the Bible codes and everything, 2017, 2018, that's it. The age of grace is over. Now, people can argue about the tribulation all they want, but I think we're going to see some really serious stuff developing here. How say you?
Oh, I have to agree, Stewart, and I'm still shocked at how long ago you did the Omega Code. And if people haven't watched that, they should. It's you grafted all that data together, and it just seems to be playing out right now.
Yep, it's being confirmed totally. And I came from a different direction than other people did, so it's just a confirmation of everything they've put together. So yeah, 5777, 2017 is the end of it, the last of the 120 years. Like Noah, you got 120 years, you better build your boat, Noah, because it's going to rain, and it's going to rain hard. So how do people reach you before we close out?
Oh, thanks, Stewart. The easiest way is just follow my blog, LarryWTaylor.org. That's LarryWTaylor.org.
Yeah, folks, you got to go over there. He keeps posting stuff all the time, all day long. It's a lot of work. And all these ministries that are really telling you the truth, they need help. So, donations don't hurt if you've got a spare shekel or so. Anyway, thanks everybody for listening, and we appreciate you, Larry, coming on, and we'll see you again next week. So good night, everybody. Take care.